Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this webinar titled Automation, Data, and Everyday Challenges in Cultivation. We're excited to dive into this topic because, as everyone knows, cultivation is only getting more complicated as the industry is looking to scale and as all the competition is growing. I think cultivators are really feeling the pressure when it comes to yield, quality, and their ongoing operational costs. Today, I am joined by two experts who have spent years tackling these challenges firsthand. I have Justin Valmont and Justin Pearson. First up, Justin Valmont. His background blends cannabis cultivation and robotics. He's a product leader with nearly 15 years of cultivation experience and holds multiple patents in plant nutrition formulation and delivery technology. As Chief Product Officer at Nourish Labs, he's helping bring precision fertigation and automation to commercial growers across North America. Thanks for joining us, Justin.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And joining him, I have Justin Pearson, who got his start in cannabis leadership back in 2017 with an Ohio-based MSO, where he helped design and scale cultivation, processing, and retail systems, focusing on compliance, automation, and facility buildouts. He later served as an operations manager at Avant Brands in Canada, overseeing more than 200,000 square feet of indoor production. With deep expertise in fertigation and nutrient delivery science, Justin's helped optimize irrigation systems for large-scale growers across North America. Thank you so much for joining us, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
And before we dive in, I want to give one more thank you to both of you for joining and for bringing your unique perspectives to this conversation. There's a lot to cover, so we can jump right in. I know you've both been in the industry for years. You've seen a lot of different facilities firsthand. What is your take on what's making some successful and others not?
I think right now the biggest thing that we're seeing is a differentiator in quality. The cultivators of the past that are no longer with us today, or hanging on by a thread. What I've seen or what I've found is that they've really struggled with that evolution in evolving their practices internally and externally, for quality. Consumers are incredibly picky. There's constantly new cultivars being released every single week, month, year, etc. It's pretty hard to keep up, and so being able to keep your quality at a super high level, but be able to learn strains on the fly, I think has been very difficult. So it's difficult to manage and maintain that quality at scale, which is why I think we've seen a shift towards craft cultivation. So maybe, slightly smaller cultivation rooms so you can really dial in the climates and the environments, et cetera, to really produce consistent, high quality cannabis. That's what I've seen. And some people are equipped to be able to, naturally evolve their practices and they want to do it. And um, others, unfortunately, are not. And I think, markets internationally and domestically are demanding overall a higher grade of quality product.
Totally have to agree there. I mean, it's the same way it was 20 years ago. The best product always sells first, and always before legalization, I mean, if you focus on quality, you would never have a problem moving your product. And so now with this shift to more of a craft style cultivation, you're now putting yourself above 75% of the other product that's out there. If your focus is on those unique cultivars and growing a high grade product.
You mentioned
Mhm.
automation. Could you be a little bit more specific at what you're seeing in these facilities with automation? What you're
Yeah, so if we kind of break well, we'll call it the cannabis segment down to the actual farming, the actual farming practices and applications of growing the crops. Um, Anything where human hands touch something or do something repetitively, I'm seeing a lot more of those processes getting replaced with automated components, or systems that can replace kind of like those mundane or those repetitive tasks that are, very burdensome on employees. Maybe it requires a high number of employees to get the task done, or it just takes, a few employees a long time to do it. One area in particular would be the fertigation area, right? So for those who are still hand watering, or they're hand mixing their nutrients, or they're spending time pH balancing, or turning on relays or plugging pumps in to transfer and manually opening valves or whatever, that is time that's taken away from your grow. And I'm seeing a lot more companies and entities shift towards, investing in automation, like the Nourish Labs all set system, for instance, where you get the precision of batch curation with the speed of direct injection. It's like the perfect blend. And that's a great example because that directly replaces all of those hands and those bodies that initially did all of those tasks together.
Totally have to agree with you. I mean, especially, cultivators making the switch from dirt or maybe even cocoa to rock wool, where now
Totally.
their irrigation events and are becoming a lot more frequent. It's almost
Mhm.
impossible to water it by hand. You need a reliable system to be able to water your plants with more precision.
Yeah, there's only so many hours in the day, and I think cultivators would agree. Like, if there could be 26 hours in a day, we'd take it. Um, and that in today's day and age, I don't think that has to be the case. Relying on systems like the Nourish Lab system in that instance, it will free up a tremendous amount of your time.
And what else are you seeing come forward as differentiators? Can you give me some examples of some of these successful automations you've seen implemented?
I'm seeing a lot of people turning to sensors now, making the transition to Rockwool, or even cocoa. People are now starting to implement crop steering, which is a practice that's been adopted from other forms of agriculture. Requires a more precise way of feeding the plants, but that also
Mhm.
means now keeping close attention to what's happening within the substrate and making those irrigation decisions based on what they're seeing going in and out of the substrate. And so I mean, it's almost impossible to do it without sensors. And so you have a lot of
Mhm.
sensor companies out there that are putting out some great products that allow you to keep your finger on the pulse.
To your point, when, like, take for instance yourself, and for whomever's listening, you think about yourself when you get sick, and you can't, home remedies don't work, so you go to the doctor. What do? They use sensors and tech sometimes. If you stub your toe and you think you broke your toe, you're probably going to get an X-ray. You're going to get a physical exam. They're probably going to take your pressure. Maybe they're going to run some blood tests and stuff like that too, right? That's using technology to understand, the kind of the root cause of the problem. And it's no different than, you know, with the automated process like Justin was talking about, because now we're leaning on sensors to be able to give us that real-time relay of data so we actually understand what is going on. Something that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have access to, right? We were just going by touch, feel, and look. And I think that's, another reason why we're seeing that increase or that improvement in quality overall, as well as, that buzzword crop steering. It's really lent itself to that practice and really helped um, people evolve and advance.
which I think a lot more, which is a reason why I think a lot more people are making that switch to growing mediums like Rockwool, where it's a completely inert growing medium, which allows you to now control exactly what's going into that substrate. And if you're doing your
Mhm.
runoffs, you're also checking your sensor data. I mean, you can now control like a lot of the growth characteristics of plants, which is amazing,
Mhm.
right? It's
Mhm.
the game's really changed.
And it also helps reduce that learning curve. I think for a lot of people, when they remember back to their first run of Rockwell, like mine, I'm sure we can all say, "Well, I hope I don't do that again." And the thing is that, sensors and technology like that, it can just help limit that overall learning curve. Essentially, it could take it from, this really difficult learning curve all the way down to nothing. So, as you're learning on the fly, you're relying on that real-time data instead of just what does your gut tell you, right? And so, yeah, to your point, I think It's incredibly important, especially with inert substrates.
And I know you've both seen a lot of different facilities and growing types, but can you share a time that you worked with a cultivator or collaborated with one that implemented automation and what that impact was?
Most recently, we did an installation at a facility that they were using not maybe not necessarily the cleanest fertilizers at the time, and so they were dealing with a lot of clogged emitters and kind of a legacy style growing practices that grew a good product and whatnot, but in this highly competitive space, um, we really need to do everything we can to increase our yields and to be more competitive with everybody else. And so, with this particular company, when we came in, we made a few suggestions regarding making the switch to grow down Rockwool, and they started using Athena fertilizer. And since making that switch from using more of like a timer style irrigation controller to our all set fertigation system, we brought them from roughly 65 grams to 80 or 85 grams. So that was a pretty significant jump in yields first crop. I mean, instantly hit like a 30% increase in profits, basically.
I think a big pain point cultivators deal with is compliance. And, guys, like without compliance, we don't have licenses. Without licenses, we can't grow. So it's in our best interest to try to appeal to the federal and provincial and statewide legislation regulations so that, we stay compliant. And, with that, we're always required or tasked, and regardless of the kind of the governing jurisdiction that you're under or that you're kind of falling under, it doesn't matter. These what they put out there, sometimes they were designed and no one had a farming background, no one had a cannabis background. They don't understand that what they're asking for is quote unquote maybe a bit excessive. And with that usually comes requirements for your processes, for your standardized operating procedures. Are you following it? Are you documenting it? How are you chaining that information together so that when they do their audits, you're actually doing what you're doing? I think we all can agree that what you say you're going to do and what you're currently doing now are two totally different things. And I remember I was talking with a quality assurance manager, really great lady, and she was telling me that you know standardized operating procedures were designed actually to be amended, to be replaced, to be edited, audited, and move along. They weren't designed to de facto just be there. And it's always stuck with me, but with that creates a lot of paperwork and headaches. So I think, having systems that can automate that process so that you're not having to sit there for hours and hours on end. And I've seen it even in some of our own facilities where people were doing like an hour and a half of paperwork every day. And what were they doing? They were verifying as part of the process. They were verifying that someone had filled out the or documented properly or logged all the information and then signing off on it. That's time that could be spent probably doing something else. And systems like, for instance, the Nourish Labs, they digitize all the batch records. It was so convenient when we'd have a kind of a surprise audit come through, and then all of a sudden we could present the digitized batch records. And I think that's a testament to where automation can, improve because it's not looking at an immediate problem, it's looking at the overall problem.
Yeah, and in addition to fertigation, what other automation or technology are you seeing that can impact the success of a cultivator?
For me, besides fertigation, to be honest, I think fertigation has we've seen the greatest impact in the last 5 to 7 years compared to the tools and instruments we were using before. I would have to say probably secondarily to that, tremendous improvement in lighting over the last 7 to 10 years, moving from HPS. the variations of the bulbs that they were coming out with, and then migrating into, I think, Fluence was the first one to drop their Viper series LED, and like, it was a game changer. A lot of people didn't trust it, myself included. And seeing where it is now with their complementing, lighting timers and controls, everything, they really, like, technology has come so far, and and to see the benefit, and the lack of detriment that it takes on your HVAC systems. It really minimizes that load and that strain it's putting on the system, which in theory should limit the amount of times that you have mechanical failures. Maybe not always true, but I've been really impressed with the technology, especially like under lighting canopy as well. But yeah, I would have to say, first and foremost, fertigation has really come a long way.
If you want a system that can generate instant ROI, I mean, look no further. Especially if you're looking to scale your business. If you're say you're a micro cultivator, you know that you have that ability to expand your facility footprint. I mean, if you're an owner operator, there's maybe limited access to employees. You want to make sure that you're investing in equipment that can help you scale.
And for producers that are looking to implement automation, what are some of the things that they should be considering or asking those technology providers?
I think it's definitely important to review your strategy with whoever it is that you're partnering with, your technology partner. For us, particularly, we dive really deep in the cultivators strategy. We want to know their goals. We want to know how they're currently feeding their plants, and also um, what do they plan on doing in the future? Do they plan on adding more rooms? How do they currently feed their plants? Are they ever thinking of making that transition to Rockwool? Um, the irrigation schedules or requirements for cocoa is much different than what's required to feed Rockwool. You might be only feeding cocoa 4 to 8 times a day, but making that switch to Rockwool, you might be feeding up to 16 times a day. I mean, if you're currently using day storage tanks, for example, do people understand the pros and the cons of these day storage tanks? So, really honing in on how you plan on doing things. Are you running a flip in your facility? If you're not, that's also going to put a tremendous demand on your fertigation system. And if you are crop steering and all your rooms are coming on at the same time, that places a real bottleneck on your fertigation system if you're only able to feed one room at a time. And I think that's one of the most challenging things with an inline system, for example. And so that's, I think, why people make that decision to go to day storage tanks, where they use their inline system to feed day storage tanks. But now you're limited to what's inside of that day storage tank. The solution's warming up. You're losing dissolved oxygen. You're getting precipitates. Your pH is drifting.
Mhm.
And now what if you're taking your runoffs and you realize that you need to make some adjustments to the subsequent recipes? Well, now you're stuck with that day storage tank. So it's doing your research, really looking into the limitations in the technology that you're investing in, and asking lots of questions.
Probably the biggest question from my perspective that cultivators should be asking is, what are we trying to achieve? If they're content with what they're producing and what they're doing, they may not be looking at automating any processes. That's fine, right? I mean, there is going to be that subset that just, they're staying in their realm. They don't want any more headache and the pressures of expanding or growing or producing more. They're happy with where they're at, and that's fine. But I would say probably for the, three quarters remaining, where they want to be the biggest and the best in their respective area, jurisdiction, county, province, whatever, maybe, in the nation. Um, so, what do you want to do? And if that's something you want to achieve and you have those goals, do you have the tools within your cultivation facility that can help take you to that next level? Um, I would probably speculate that, for a large number of those listening right now, you may not actually have equipment that can grow with your appetite to become better, to grow better, to do better. Um, that's a limitation, right? So once you understand that, once you create that outline and you understand who you are, what you want to do, and where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, and kind of have that build out that business plan, then being strategic about what you're investing in automating in. For me, it always came down to vendor relations and partnerships. People that I knew that would help grow with me and build with me, but also offered a product that would grow and build with me. Justin touched earlier on the modular nature of their system. That's incredible. A lot of companies I've found, especially in fertigation, have suggested that it is modular. You can just do this and do this, but when you actually go and do it, it's not that easy. It's more of a pain actually to do that than just to order a new custom system that has that built in from the start. That's not really efficient. That's not good use of time, money, et cetera, right? So um, investing in systems that will grow with your needs or will just stay put and help you stay dialed in. I think that's the question starts with what are we trying to achieve? And the answer is the right partnership and the right vendor, like Nourish Labs, for instance, who can get you exactly what you want and can grow with you for the future to come.
Totally agree.
And I know you both touched on this a little bit, but I know what we're seeing in the industry right now is a lot of these fragmented legacy systems that don't talk to each other. What are your thoughts on that?
It's no one's fault that fragmentation is in the grow rooms. Like, when vendors were coming out with products, let's say lighting, for instance, they weren't thinking, hey, we should make this, um, have some sort of integrative capability with our environmental controls. They were like, let's make the best light in the world for the cultivator, and here's our little controller that controls it. Like that was the thought process, right? And I think what we're seeing now is that people spent the time to research and they got the best products, but they don't necessarily talk to one another. So what does that mean? You've got someone who's qualified and trained, who's probably running around those rooms, ensuring that the little different nuances to each your system, whether it's your HVAC and your compressor relays haven't tripped, or there's no like flashing alarm light on your PLC or something like that. It's giving you an error code, or um, your emitters or your pumps not, your pumps running properly and the valves aren't stuck. Like, there's probably a significant amount of time, labor, and money spent on, ensuring those things, and that person's got that role. But what happens if that person isn't here tomorrow, right? Or they're sick, or they're injured, or what? Like you were relying on that. So, um, fra fragmented systems, legacy systems, they don't necessarily have redundancies built in that protect the cultivator and the company owners. And again, it's no fault of anyone. It's just how I think the industry was and has always been until now, right? So
Yeah, I mean
that's
there's
my
nothing
thoughts.
worse than having, multiple screens open. You're having to look at the data on one screen, use that data to make decisions on another screen off of like a Windows 95 style dashboard. So, I mean, it's for us in particular right now, we have a big push right now to work with all the substrate sensor providers out there where we can pull in their data and use our dashboard to use that data right away and make intelligent decisions based on what you're seeing in that substrate.
Very cool. And overall, what do you guys think is providing the greatest ROI for these companies that are looking to expand and grow their footprint?
Well, I definitely have to say fertigation. I mean, it's right out of the crate. You're going to be saving money. You're going to be going from paying somebody to sit in front of a reservoir, mixing fertilizers, adding buffers, and getting the pH to where you want it to be, to now that person can focus more on IPM. They can focus more on um, analyzing what's happening in the substrate, doing their runoffs, checking the overall health of the plants. But
Mhm.
not only that, but reducing the risk of human error. Um, when um, when I built my first fertigation system was for my own garden, and before that, I was stuck to my garden 365 days a year. I didn't trust anybody to come in and mix the recipes to feed my plants because it's that one task that if you don't do correctly, you
Mhm.
could you could fry your entire crop. And so I remember when I first turned on the system and now had the ability to automate the process of batch preparing a recipe. It was the greatest thing since sliced bread. All of a sudden now it freed up 2, 3 hours every day. Like I gained 2, 3 hours per day. They say you can't buy
Yeah.
can buy time through automation, and that allowed us to travel. Now I could leave. We then started traveling. It was uh it was a complete game changer. So invest in technology that can give you time.
And Justin, to your point, fertigation is, and I've always used this expression over the years, fertigation is the heartbeat of the cannabis facility. It's pumping the fluids all throughout the facility, the nourishment to the facility. It's making sure the plants get watered on time with the correct formulation, pH, everything else, right? And so I think it is probably the greatest return on investment if you're using an antiquated system or a system that just doesn't work for your immediate and long-term needs. Um, I mean, we've seen it firsthand using the all set system. Ease of use, the ability to be able to, remote login, receive alarms, maintenance updates, et cetera, right? Batch records, like you name it. But it's been a game changer, and I too am a bit biased with fertigation, and I do believe it is the heartbeat of the facility. And without it, it would just be more of a monstrous task, cultivation, than it currently is. So, I would encourage everyone who's on the edge, on the fence, thinking about a fertigation system now, or just automating that process, reach out to the guys at Nourish Labs. They're super easy to talk to, and just have that discussion, because at the end of the day, it's just a discussion. You can only gain from it. You can't lose from it. It won't cost you anything. Have that discussion, learn more about it, and if it's the right fit for you.
I think it's also important to remember the long game too, right? Like you gotta look at 5, 10, 15 years down the road. If you're an owner operator, you're in this for the long game. Think of your savings over the course of 5, 10, 15 years. Your system will pay itself off in the first maybe year and a half. And thereafter, it just keeps printing money for you. So what other investment can you make that'll give you such a quick return on investment and last for the lifetime of your facility?
I
Mhm.
think that's a great place for us to end for the day as we're running out of time. But big thank you to both of you for joining us and for everyone that has tuned in. If you do have any follow-up questions or want to connect with either one of the Justins offline, their contact information is on the screen, and I'm sure they both love to talk to you. Thanks again for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for
Okay.
having me. Appreciate it.